Hello and welcome to Growing in Uncertainty. My name is Tess Miller, and through my seminar and coaching business, Wings Unfolded, I help people who really love what they're doing, but they're not sure where it's going. My hope in making these videos is to actually help myself. You may have noticed this if you've been watching for a while. I share a lot of stories and tools and observations and tips that I've actually worked out in my own life to help myself. But sometimes, as you're going to notice in today's video, I'm using this video in real time to really get myself to say out loud some of the things that I need to be truly working on for myself. It's almost my way of using you guys as an accountability partner and, help me take action in a big way in my life to help keep me going forward. So I hope that whatever I have to share with you today is really helpful if you're experiencing some of the same themes in your life. Also my intention is to share any and all of my stuck experiences in my life. I talk a lot about being stuck. I wrote a book called The Book of Stuck. So if you're feeling stuck in your life in some way, you've come to the right place. So, friends, I am feeling completely overwhelmed in my life right now. I'm not sure if that's the result of having a year and a half of, not a whole lot, at least a year anyway, I should say, a year of, the pandemic and not having as much on my plate as I'm used to having. And now that everything is opening up in public spaces and work is coming back on board and people are starting to move, it's feeling a little bit overwhelming. And I'm noticing that I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, how did I let this happen again? Or how did I operate in this way before the pandemic? Is this really how I want my life to feel going forward? I always said that I liked the slower pace of the pandemic, but why am I allowing this to happen again? So anyway, whatever the reason, I'm trying to stay present with it. That's the main thing that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to really stay present with it, trying not to beat myself up about it too much. And I'm trying to be really curious this time about observing my experience of being overwhelmed. And so some of the things that I'm noticing that are coming up for me in this experience is that I have a lot of fear. One of my fears is that I'm not going to get it all done, that there's just literally not going to be enough time for me to get it all in. I'm also noticing a fear that I might forget about something. I might drop the ball on a meeting or a phone call or something like that. I have a fear of maybe doing something wrong or being sloppy, a fear about things not being perfect. And I'm noticing that I have a hard time choosing what to do first. When I have a lot of wheels spinning at the same time, I want to do it all. I want to get it all done, but making that choice of what to tackle first can be like the hardest first step to even take. And I'm noticing that when I do finally choose something to focus on, I have a hard time staying focused on it because my mind is thinking about all the other things and how I'm going to accomplish those things, when I'm going to accomplish those things. So it's just this overall big feeling of frustration that I want life to be going at a little bit slower pace than I feel like I'm allowing myself to go, or that life in general is allowing me to go right now. And I wanted to share this with you because I've been hearing a lot of other people say that they're feeling overwhelmed in their lives too right now. And so I was hoping that maybe if I talk out what my experience is, that could help a lot of you who are saying this. But also, I wanted you to see that I don't always have it figured out. You know, just because I'm a coach and I put up all these fancy videos and I write articles and all of that, I don't have it all figured out all the time. I'm a human being and I experience all of these human experiences all the time too. So, you know, I guess strength in numbers, when we know that we all share these experiences, sometimes it's a little bit easier to bear. It's a little bit easier to turn to each other for some help and some guidance, or even just, you know, to know that you're not alone. So anyway, my hope is that we can learn together as we collectively step into our unknown futures. So I wanted to share, I think, 5 tools that's how I'm thinking of them anyway. 5 tools that I'm consciously using in this experience of being overwhelmed. And the first tool that I use is the tool of observation. And this is a really big one. You know, sometimes we can fall straight down a rabbit hole when we're feeling overwhelmed by something. We can fall down the rabbit hole of following our thoughts and our emotions about why is this happening? It shouldn't be happening, and we start resisting. But instead of doing that, I'm just observing what's coming up for me. So I notice an intense thought or emotion, and I pause and I name it. I think giving a name to the experience really helps to kind of lock it in place for a second so that you can actually look at it. It's like I'm seeing the Karate Kid when Mr. Miyagi, all of a sudden, you know, he has his chopsticks and he catches the fly. That's almost what I'm doing with observation, is I'm catching that annoyance so that I can look at it and see what it's all about, just for a second, or maybe more than a second. I don't know, however long I need to look at it. So, you know, it's important to know that observing what we're experiencing in a moment isn't the same as, like, you know, being beaten down by it, or, you know, surrendering to it or anything like that. It's really just taking time to really think about what's actually happening right now in this moment. What is actually happening when I'm feeling overwhelmed? And when I take that time, I can see that actually in the moment, nothing is happening. It's anything that's happening is all in my head. You know, there might be a story that I'm telling myself, or an emotion, a pattern that is from an older place in my life. So observation is such a great teacher. And it's teaching you about how you can approach every situation in your life from your highest self in that moment. So the example that I want to use today is that this morning I got into the shower, and the shower is typically a place for me to think through my day. You know, I can think about, first I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. And at one point I realized that my thoughts were spiraling into, oh my gosh, oh no, that's right, I have to do this too, and I have to do this too. What if I don't get this done? And oh my gosh, they're going to be so mad at me if I don't do this. And it started spiraling into a lot of fear speak, you know. And once I realized that fear speak had started to happen, I stopped myself in mid-thought and I named it. I just thought fear. You know, I noticed, I named it and I noticed what it felt like. And hearing myself say fear out loud allowed me to actually just let the feeling be there for a second. Instead of resisting it or pushing it down or ignoring it, I invited it in. Okay, fear. There it is. That way I know that the feeling isn't getting stuck in some place where it's not actually going to have time to process. So the second tool that I use in feeling overwhelmed is to acknowledge and validate whatever it is that I've just named for myself. So if you've been watching my videos, you know that acknowledging and validating is one of my favorite tools for dealing with any difficult thoughts and or emotions. You know, for example, with my fear thoughts and feelings, once I named fear, I could say to myself, well, of course I'm afraid right now. I have all of these things that I need to do and I don't feel like I have enough time. That's pretty scary, you know, to not feel like you have enough time and yet you've said yes to doing all of these things. And of course I'm feeling overwhelmed. I hardly even have time to take this shower this morning, you know, so I acknowledged it and I validated what my experience was. Then, by acknowledging and validating it, my thoughts and feelings could actually move through my body. It's no longer stuck. It's just, it's in motion now, and I can actually do something with it. So then that brings me to the third tool of dealing with being overwhelmed, and that's the tool of self-soothing. So this one was interesting in the shower because after I acknowledged and validated what I was going through, I instantly did something for myself that I haven't done since I had a baby. And I said, shh. I shushed myself. And in the moment, I had no idea why I was doing that. But after I shushed myself, I realized, oh my gosh, that made my mind stop. That made all of those thoughts just kind of scatter like dust particles. It went away. And I could breathe again and I could relax. And I noticed how much tension I was holding in my body. So just by saying, shh, that kind of, you know, rattled me out of that pattern of whatever thoughts were coming up for me about being afraid. And so self-soothing is a really important thing that you can do for yourself when you're feeling overwhelmed. That might be shushing yourself like I did. It might be going for a walk. It might be getting yourself some water. It might be talking to someone. Whatever you need to do to self-soothe that is healthy and in your best interest and highest good. So then the fourth tool that I use when I'm feeling overwhelmed is the tool of self-reflection. Now this one requires a little bit of homework beforehand. It's really hard to do self-reflection if you haven't already developed the muscle of self-awareness. So if you've already, if you're watching these videos, you have already developed the muscle of self-awareness. You're already working on that for yourself. So self-awareness helps you know yourself on a deeper level. And when you know yourself on a deeper level, then you can use the tool of self-reflection. Self-reflection takes self-awareness and bumps it up like 10 notches. It makes you take more of an action on what you already know about yourself. When we reflect on what we're observing about ourselves and what we're experiencing, we can start to see ourselves in a different light. We can start to change the stories that we're telling ourselves. You know, when I was in the shower, I reflected that my fear has a tendency to come from not wanting to let anybody down. And that comes from me historically being a people pleaser. You know, I want to make everybody happy. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to let anyone down. But this also, as I self-reflected some more, made me realize that, you know, there have been a lot of times in my life when I've bent over backwards, and I might notice how much I'm doing, but other people don't really know that I'm bending over backwards for them. They don't even really care a lot of times. That's, you know, no, not because, you know, they're uncaring people. It's just that they're in their own worlds. They're thinking about their own stuff. They're not thinking about what it is that I'm doing. And so, you know, I've had to do a lot of work to realize, oh, maybe I don't have to bend over backwards quite so much for other people. Maybe that's an expectation that I'm putting on myself that other people are not putting on me. So, I also reflected on the days in my career burnout when I kept scheduling things back to back, because on paper it looked good. It worked out. I could do all that stuff, but it didn't always feel good. And I think, you know, reflecting on it in the shower this morning, I think I'm falling back into that pattern of scheduling things back to back to back because it looks good on paper, but going forward, I want to be better about not doing that. I've learned my lesson. I don't need to repeat that one. So then that brings me to the fifth tool of dealing with being overwhelmed, and this is the tool of taking action. Once you've used all those other tools, now it's time to actually take some action. And I know that taking action when you're feeling overwhelmed might seem like you're just adding more to your plate, but what's really happening when you take action on what you've self-reflected on is that you are demonstrating to yourself that you're hearing yourself, that you're paying attention to yourself and what your thoughts and your emotions and maybe even your physical body are trying to tell you. Our inner selves are really no different. You know, the relationship that we have with our inner selves is really no different than the relationship that we have with anybody else in our lives. You know, if you think about it, in relationships with other people, when our friends or family or colleagues don't feel heard or understood by us, they either get louder or they leave the relationship. And our inner selves, when our inner selves don't feel like we've listened to or heard the inner self, it will either get louder, which means it might produce some anxiety or some depression or maybe some kind of chronic illness, or our inner self will just kind of disappear. We'll check out. We'll become completely apathetic. We'll just not want to do anything. And then we'll wonder, why am I not doing anything? What's wrong with me? So our inner selves are no different when we don't listen to our inner selves than when we don't listen to the other people in our lives. But when we take action with people in our lives, in other words, when we acknowledge and validate what they're saying and we collaborate with them, we work with them, we relate with them, then our relationships, our outer relationships, get a lot better and we feel better as a result. It's the same with our inner selves too. We have to have a good relationship with ourselves. When we demonstrate through action, not just words, not just thoughts, but through action that we're listening to and hearing ourselves, then our relationship with ourselves gets a lot better and we know that we can trust ourselves. Taking action doesn't have to be anything extreme. I know people who can have a tendency to keep themselves even more stuck by thinking that everything has to be perfect and they got to make the perfect take the perfect action for themselves, but then that perfection ends up stopping them before they can even start. So it's really best to keep your action simple. My action plan right now is going to be to make a list of all the tasks that I have on my plate right now. It's going to be handwritten, so I can scribble things out. It's just so much more satisfying for me when I can do that, when I cross things off my to-do list. I'm going to post this list someplace where I can see it. I'll also take great comfort in knowing that my tasks are all written down, which means I don't have to just keep them in my head. I have less of a chance of forgetting things if I write it down. I can keep adding to it, taking things off. I can refer to it when I need to. And if I really want to get just a little bit fancy with it, maybe I'll even write a date next to each item, and that will be my deadline. I have to have this done by fill in the blank. A second action step for me is going to be to start scheduling in my calendar some downtime for myself. I have not been good at that at all. I'm the kind of person that thinks, oh, I'll fit the downtime in whenever I can. And then what's the first thing for me to neglect in my calendar? My downtime. So I think for me, it's time to start actually scheduling myself and really treating it like any other appointment in my life. Really honor it. So your action steps might look different, so you get to choose the action steps that speak to you. So those are the tools that I'm going to be using right now in feeling overwhelmed in my life. I hope these tools help you too. If you have any other tools that you want to share with this, space, please do so in the comments below. As you know, my focus word for 2021 is freedom. And I am currently acknowledging that I have the freedom to schedule downtime for myself in order to prevent overwhelm in my life. So there's my affirmation for the next several weeks, years going forward. I hope this message resonates with you. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm always so grateful for your presence and to hear any feedback that you might want to share with me. Please like and or share these videos with anyone in your life that you feel might benefit from hearing these tips and tricks and tools. And I'm starting to schedule some in-person book events for my new book, The Book of Stuck. You can find it on Amazon these days. If you want to know when and where those events are happening, you can join my email list on my website, www.tess-miller.com. And if you want to know when my virtual book events are going to happen, you should also go to my website. I haven't scheduled anything just yet because I've been feeling so overwhelmed, but I promise I will very soon. You can stay tuned to any other updates also on my Facebook page, my LinkedIn page, and that is under my business name, Wings Unfolded, LLC. And you can find me by name, Tess Miller, on Instagram and on YouTube. If there's something that you want help with related to a life transition, feel free to send me a private message. I'd love to connect with you. And remember that it's okay to be stuck, but you don't have to stay there. Have a fantastic week and take care.